Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Big Blue Sports on WCVF 88.9 FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. I'm your host, Matt Volz, a senior at SUNY Fredonia. It is Thursday, September 25th, and we are ready to roll. The Bills are 3-0 after last Thursday night's win over the Dolphins, which I was there for. I'm going to talk all about my tailgating experience as well as the game itself. And we're going to take a look at the next couple of games because next week is fall break here at SUNY Fredonia. So there will be no Big Blue on Thursday of next week. I know everyone is so sad and so heartbroken over that. Believe me, as am I. But I'll be back in 2 weeks. And so before then, I am going to talk about the next couple of Bills games. Of course, the Bills at home against the 0-3 New Orleans Saints Sunday at 1 o'clock. And then the week after that, on October 5th, they have the Sunday night game again at home against the division rival New England Patriots. Of course, Stefon Diggs making his return to Buffalo for the first time since being traded to Houston before the start of last season. The Bills, of course, wearing their all-white snowstorm rivalry outfits, uniforms in that game as well, which I still honestly have mixed feelings about. The Sabres, Game 3 of the preseason is tonight. The Sabres in Detroit for a matchup against the Red Wings tonight. The Sabres are 2-0 so far in this preseason with back-to-back wins over the Columbus Blue Jackets on Monday and Tuesday night. We'll talk all about that later, as well as take a look at what's upcoming this weekend in Week 4 of the NFL season. Some teams that I am pleasantly surprised by, some teams that I'm surprised are having a rougher season than I thought they would. So we'll take a look at Fredonia sports to start, as always, and we'll start by talking about men's soccer. They just finished up their last non-conference game. So it is all conference opponents from here on out for the rest of the regular season. And then until we get into the SUNYAC play, the SUNYAC tournament begins at the beginning of November. But for about the next month, and their last regular season game is actually a month from today. So for the next month, it is all conference opponents for the men's soccer team. They concluded non-conference play with a 2-1 loss at Houghton on Tuesday to drop their overall record to 4-2-3. The Blue Devils, it's an interesting split. They are undefeated at home this season. They are 4-0 at home, but they are winless on the road. They're 4-0 at home. They are 0-2 on the road, and they had one neutral site game earlier this season. That was back at the end of August, where they tied in that game, which gives you the overall record of 4-2-3. They have had one conference game that they played so far. That was last Saturday at home against Plattsburgh, and Fredonia won that game 1-0. So they are off to a 1-0 start in conference play. They're on the road for their next few, headed up to Canton for a 1 p.m. matchup against the Canton Kangaroos. Yes, that is their actual mascot, at 1 p.m. on Saturday. Then they've got an entire week off before heading to New Paltz on Saturday, October 4th, 1 p.m. start in that game. The Battle by the Lake in a couple of weeks, Wednesday, October 8th, a 7 p.m. matchup at Buff State. They're not home again for a while. Their next home game is Saturday, October 11th at 1 p.m. when they take on Oneonta. Again, it is conference opponents from here on out for men's soccer. Women's soccer is the same way. They are pretty much all, except for one, pretty much all conference opponents the rest of the way out. They're coming off of a scoreless tie at Brockport on Tuesday. Overall record at 2-4-3 on the season. They've played one conference game so far this year. They had a 5-0 loss at Plattsburgh last Saturday. They are at home for the first time in a little while on Saturday, hosting Canton at 1 p.m. They've got their last non-conference game of the regular season next week, Tuesday, at home against Nazareth University, Nazareth in the Empire 8, before resuming conference play on Saturday, October 4th at home against New Paltz, 1 p.m. start. Cross country also getting set to host their annual Cara Hall Memorial Invitational, that taking place on Saturday, October 4th. Again, there's a handful of teams that mention this on pretty much every single show, how this invitational has really grown over the last few years. 2 meets under the belt for men's and women's cross country. They are headed on the road to take on the road for a meet hosted by Roberts Wesleyan University this Saturday at the Matt St. James Cross Country Trails. The men's race gets started at 10 a.m. on Saturday. They will start today. The women's race will begin at 11 a.m. And then, of course, both teams are at home on Saturday, October 4th for the Cara Hall Memorial Invitational. Only one meet after the Cara Hall Invitational before SUNYX. That's on October 18th at Rowan University when they're headed to Glassboro, New Jersey. SUNYAC meet is on Saturday, November 1st, and that will be hosted this year by Plattsburgh. Volleyball struggling a little bit on the year. They do have a home win picked up. That was all the way back at the beginning of September. That was a couple of weeks ago. They're coming off of a couple of losses, most recently a shutout loss at Hilbert on Tuesday. They're on the road for their next couple. They are headed to Houghton this weekend for a tournament. They will take on the Highlanders at 11 a.m. on Saturday, and then they will take on Carlow later on Saturday at some point during the day. Again, they are coming up on starting conference play. That begins on Friday, October 3rd at Morrisville. And their first home conference match not until Friday, October 17th, when they host Canton at 6 p.m. And then a few home there as well. The Fredonia State tri-match set for Saturday, November 8th, when the Blue Devils will play host to RIT and John Carroll. They'll host RIT at 11 o'clock. John Carroll and RIT will play each other at 1, and then Fredonia will face John Carroll at 3. And then the SUNYAC tournament will start on Tuesday, November 11th. Of course, working our way towards the end of the regular season. We are into conference play for most of the fall sports. And then finally, women's tennis still looking to get on the board. They're coming off of a shutout loss in both matches that were played at Cortland over the weekend. A 7-0 loss against Plattsburgh on Friday and a 7-0 loss to New Paltz on Saturday. Tennis team is 0-7 overall so far, 0-3 in conference play. So they have 4 matches left on the fall schedule. Of course, remember, they do play some matches in the spring as well. They have 2 conference matches and 2 non-conference matches. They are at home for a conference match against Cortland at 1 p.m. on Saturday. Home, a non-conference match next Tuesday, 4 p.m. against Nazareth. Last conference game of the regular season next Saturday, October 4th at 1 p.m. against Oneonta. And they finish up the regular season at Damon up in Buffalo at 9 a.m. on Sunday. SUNYAC tournament begins on Friday, October 17th. And, of course, that's for the fall tennis season. Tennis is a little bit different as most of the season takes place in the fall, but they do play a few matches later in the spring as well, but their primary season is in the fall. We're going to take a short break. When I come back, going to talk about how the Sabres are surprisingly off to a 2-0 start in the preseason, again in Detroit for the third game of the preseason tonight. Contract renegotiations with Alex Tuck also ongoing for the Sabres, and we'll see where they're at ahead of tonight's preseason matchup in Detroit. Thanks for tuning in to Big Blue Sports this afternoon on WCVF 88.9 FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. And welcome back to Big Blue Sports on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. Ever bored on campus? Do you want to just get up and explore town while having fun? Well, there's no better way than with Rockin' the Commons coming later this month, this weekend actually, on Saturday, September 27th. The event runs from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and is hosted by the lovely Fredonia Radio Systems right here on campus. That's us. There's nothing better than take a stroll downtown and enjoy family activities, raffles, live music, and more. Can't wait to see you there. And for anybody who might be particularly hungry on Saturday, you can come stop in and get some food. We have hot dogs that were generously donated to us by dupers. We are also going to be making some grilled cheese. It's going to be so much fun, and yours truly is going to be on the grill. I am so excited. Come see me, and I will make sure that you do not leave Rockin' the Commons hungry. I will make sure to not only fill your stomachs, but fill your hearts as well with my lovely grilling. You know who's filling my heart right now is the Buffalo Sabres. They are 2-0 so far in their preseason, which, again, take it with a grain of salt. It's the preseason. It doesn't really matter. But it's still, the Sabres are 2-0. Like, it's still fair to get excited about it. Why not? We haven't had a whole lot to be excited about when it comes to the Sabres over the last few years. So, you know what? I don't blame fans who are seeing that the Sabres are 2-0 in the preseason and are like, you know what? Yeah, let's celebrate this. Enjoy it, because guess what? The Sabres are not going to be undefeated for long, and they might not be undefeated at any point in the regular season. So the Sabres started the preseason with 2 games against the Columbus Blue Jackets. That's kind of how they're doing the preseason now, and they're going to adjust it, I believe, for next year when the regular season goes from 82 games bumped up to 84. So they have 6 preseason games, and how they're doing it is they're having a home-and-home series with each team. So it's kind of like they're doing one team is at home one night, the next night they go to the other team, and they're kind of doing it, putting teams into groups that way. So the Sabres started the preseason with 2 matchups against the Blue Jackets. They have 2 against the Detroit Red Wings and then 2 against the Pittsburgh Penguins, and that ends the preseason, brings us into the regular season. The next episode of Big Blue Sports, actually 2 weeks from today, is actually the same day that the Sabres begin the regular season. Thursday, October 9th, the Sabres at home against the New York Rangers at 7 p.m. And again, we'll talk very heavily about the Sabres on that show. Hopefully the Bills will still be undefeated. We'll get to them later. But the Sabres began the preseason in Columbus on Monday night. Rotated goaltenders. They had a decent amount of NHL talent. Again, preseason, a lot of times for hockey, is a mix between you have some of your NHL players and you have some of your prospects out there on the ice. As far as goalies, they usually rotate goalies mid-game as well. The Sabres did that. They had Alexander Georgiev, who was a late offseason signing, started the game. Devin Levi came in later, and they actually ended up combining for the shutout. Georgiev stopped all 16 shots that he faced, while Devin Levi came in later in the game and faced 6 shots and stopped all of them as well. Sabres had a decent amount of prospects playing in this game, including their first-round draft pick of this past year, defenseman Radim Murtka, and he actually got on the board with an assist midway through the second period, assisting on a Bo Byram goal. Tyson Kozak also got the assist on that goal. Sabres up 1-0. Later in the period, Beck Mallenstein gets his first preseason goal of 2025. Owen Power and the new guy, Michael Kesselring, getting the assist. Kesselring making his Sabres debut in the preseason, as well as Josh Doan. Of course, those two coming over in the trade with Utah when the Sabres traded away J.J. Peterka this offseason. Buffalo led 2-0 going into the third period. Jack Quinn buried an empty net goal with about 5 minutes to go. Assist courtesy of Yuri Kulik and the other new guy from Utah, Josh Doan, which, by the way, if the last name Doan sounds familiar, that is because Josh Doan is the son of longtime Arizona Coyotes forward Shane Doan, who was a criminally underrated player of his era because he played his entire career on a terrible team. And the Sabres' first-round pick from 2024, am I doing my math right? Yes. From 2024, Konsta Helenius actually scored a goal late with less than a minute to go as well to make it a 4-0 score. Assists from Anton Wahlberg, who was Buffalo's second-round pick a couple of years ago, and a defenseman who I have tried for years to pronounce his first name, and I can't. I know his last name is Komarov. It is a Russian first name that I am going to butcher, and I'm honestly not even going to try. But he got the assist. Sabres win it 4-0. They outshot Columbus 35-22 in this game. Not to mention out-hit the Blue Jackets 38-30. Columbus took more penalties. The Sabres lost the faceoff battle, but those little things that you're seeing the Sabres do right through the first two games of the preseason, out-shooting, out-hitting, and staying out of the penalty box, those are key elements that even though it is a preseason and it doesn't really matter, those are things that could still carry over into the regular season and be very important. On Tuesday, the Sabres were at home against the Blue Jackets. I was not able to see this game. I was hosting a meeting during the time of the game. Again, for the second straight game, nobody scored in the first period. Sabres had a lot more of their NHL talent playing in this game, and you'll see that more as the preseason winds down. You'll see certain players, get officially sent down to Rochester as Buffalo tries to finalize their official regular season roster. Sabres gave up the first goal of this game. Miles Wood scored on the power play. Assist from Damon Hunt and Hudson Fasching. Yes, that is the same Hudson Fasching who the Sabres got in a trade as a prospect years ago and ended up being a total bust. He also was the guy who had that goal, the puck that he kicked into the net when he was with the Islanders, that the Sabres lost that game against the Islanders and ended up missing the playoffs by 1 point a couple of years ago. That was that guy. Not Sabres fans, not a big fan of him. And by the way, Miles Wood also has a connection to Buffalo. His dad, Randy Wood, played for the Sabres in the 90s. It's kind of funny how a lot of these connections still exist in the NHL. But yeah, Miles Wood's dad, Randy, was a player for the Sabres in the early 90s when they were still playing at the Odd. Buffalo would answer late in the second period. Tage Thompson is back with assists coming from the two guys who switched jersey numbers during the offseason, Zach Benson and Josh Norris. Of course, Benson no longer wearing number 9. Benson switching to number 6 for this upcoming season. Josh Norris will now wear number 9 instead of wearing 13, which he wore last season for the Sabres. And if you don't remember seeing him wear number 13, it's because he was pretty much never healthy enough to play. So going into the third period, it's tied 1-1. More than halfway through the period, Jason Zucker re-signed, gets the goal to put the Sabres ahead. Assists from Konsta Helenius and Ryan McLeod. Buffalo holds on for the 2-1 win. They start the preseason 2-0. And again, this was the second straight game where the Sabres outshot Columbus rather handily. They outshot the Blue Jackets 34-19 on Tuesday. Not to mention out-hit. They had 7 more hits than the Blue Jackets did. Dominated from the faceoff dot. The Sabres won more than 2/3 of the faceoffs on Tuesday. You'll hear me say it throughout the rest of the segment, and it's true. It's the preseason. It doesn't really matter. But it's also, there are positive takeaways that are coming from it. I mean, even though it's a game that, in the standings in the regular season does not matter, it's still, you've got young players who are finding ways to put together wins, and that's something that's really huge, and that's something that the Sabres very much are in need of. There are a group of guys who it sounds weird, but they're a group of players who need to learn what it's like to win, if that makes any sense. But, I think it's important to put together these wins. Don't necessarily put too much stake into it. You don't want to seem like this is, the Sabres are going to win the Stanley Cup because they're 2-0 in the preseason with 2 wins over the Blue Jackets. Like, no, that's obviously not true. But still, putting together those wins is absolutely nothing to scoff at. Sabres again in Detroit for a 7 p.m. matchup with the Red Wings tonight as the preseason rolls on. And the next time you will hear me live on Big Blue 2 weeks from today is the regular season opener, the Sabres at home against the New York Rangers on Thursday, October 9th at 7 p.m. Well, we're going to take a short break, and it's going to be all NFL for the second half of the show. Going to talk about my experience last week at the Bills-Dolphins game, as well as talk about the game, look at what happened in the NFL last week, preview this week's action, and take a look at the Bills' upcoming 2 games. Thanks for tuning in to Big Blue Sports on WCVF 88.9 FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. And welcome back to Big Blue Sports on WCVF 88.9. The Bills are 3-0 in the 2025 season, coming off of a Thursday night win over the Miami Dolphins. And before I go into the analysis and recap of the game, I was at this game. And so it was the first regular season game I've been to in a couple of years. I went to a few back 2 seasons ago. Parker Granat, our former sports director here at Fredonia Radio Systems, the two of us went to a couple of games that season. And one of the games we went to was the home game against the Dolphins that year. And that was, you might remember 2 years ago, that was the week after the Dolphins had hung 70 points on a terrible Broncos team. And everybody was talking about how good Miami was, with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Devon Achane was amazing. And they even had Raheem Mostert running the ball. And it was like, the Dolphins are good. They're going to be so good. They're awesome. They're better than the Bills. They're going to overtake the Bills. And that game was so hyped up. It was so loud at that game. I have never in my life, heard another Bills game that loud as that day. So this offseason, when the schedule was released and it was determined that the Dolphins were going to be coming to Buffalo in week 3 on Thursday Night Football, I texted both, I texted both Chloe, my girlfriend, and our friend Alex, who, of course, longtime FRS listeners may be familiar with both of them. I texted him and I was like, we have to go to this game. We've got to go. This being the last year in the stadium, I knew that I wanted to go. I wanted to be there for the last Dolphins-Bills game in this stadium. A rivalry that I talked about it last week on the show. A rivalry that just has so much history that comes with it. I had to be there for the last time they were coming here. So we got tickets and we went. So I was on the air, of course, last Thursday, and I left very shortly after the show. I left, we went up, packed my car. We packed the cooler. We had hot dogs, we had chips, we had waters, and that's actually not a joke. We seriously did bring waters because it was really warm outside. We brought other drinks as well. We had my tailgate grill. The whole tailgate grill was packed in the back of my car, and we were ready to go, decked out in our Bills gear. We got to the tailgate lot, and I grilled some hot dogs. It was fantastic. We ate, had a couple of waters, threw the football around, and we were ready to go. It was so much fun. So we walked to a couple of different tailgate lots, and one of the ones, the primary one that we went to was Hammer's Lot. Now, any longtime Bills fan will likely be somewhat familiar with Hammer's Lot. It is not only the most iconic Bills tailgate lot, it might be the most iconic tailgate lot in all of football, or maybe all of like sports. So Hammer's Lot is a parking lot next to the stadium. It's across the street and a little bit down. It's right next to what will be the new stadium. And it is a lot where a lot of people go to hang out before the game. One of the biggest parts of it, though, is this guy named Pinto Ron. So for anybody who is not familiar with Pinto Ron, about an hour and a half before kickoff of every game, and he's been doing this since the 80s, the early 80s, Pinto Ron is this guy who he's got gray hair, he's got a beard, he wears glasses. He drives a Pinto truck to each Bills game, which is, I believe, from either the late 70s or early 80s. They grill food on the top of the truck, and about an hour and a half before kickoff of every Bills home game, Pinto Ron stands holding a hot dog with his arms out, and various other people will stand on the top of a van and douse him with ketchup and mustard. It sounds crazy. It's really cool. And I'd always wanted to see it in person. I'd never seen it in person. And this time it came with a twist, because not only was Pinto Ron there, and not only was Channel 7 Eyewitness News there live on TV, Ross Chastain, who is a NASCAR Cup Series driver, he's at the highest level, a phenomenal driver. Ross Chastain was there in a Josh Allen jersey. I don't know why. So for anybody not familiar with NASCAR, Ross Chastain grew up as a watermelon farmer. And his tradition, he drives the number 1 car. His tradition is every time he wins a race, he is given a large watermelon and he throws it on the ground and smashes it, which again sounds crazy. It's really cool. So we had a 2-for-1 special. Ross Chastain, standing on top of the van, live on Channel 7, smashes that watermelon to the ground. Now, I will say, Chloe and I were in the front row for this. We were originally kind of in a cluster. We were behind a few people. It was the 3 of us. And then one of the ones who was directing sort of the layout, because it's a whole thing that goes into it. Because Pinto Ron obviously needs room to like stand and get doused with the ketchup and mustard. So you kind of make a little bit of like almost a U shape around him and give him room. But as they were arranging us to stand, there was a Dolphins fan who was standing in the front row. And this guy comes over to Chloe and I, and he's like, "Here, you guys, go cover up this Dolphins fan." So we're like, okay. So Alex had met up with somebody that he knows from work. And so Chloe and I went over to cover up this Dolphins fan. And so we are in the front row live on Channel 7 as Ross Chastain is throwing the watermelon on the ground. And as the Pinto Ron ceremony is happening, we were so close to Ross Chastain's watermelon drop. Both of us got watermelon bits on our legs. We were so close. That also ended up on Ross Chastain's social media. I don't know if it was on all of them. I know the video was posted on his Twitter. But yeah, we were front row for that. We were front row for Pinto Ron. We took a picture. It's hard to get a picture with Pinto Ron afterwards. Everybody kind of crowds around him and tries to do that. But we took a selfie of us with Pinto Ron covered in the background. So that was cool. That was amazing. We went and visited with Chloe. Works for one of the things that she does is she works with the owners of a group called 26 Productions, and it was also on Instagram. It was on Ross Chastain's Instagram too. And her boss is help to run the fan activations that take place at the game. So if you've ever seen outside of the stadium these igloo-looking things, they sort of help to run that. And we went to meet up with her bosses, and there was a truck there that you could go into, and there was a camera that was recording, and you could tell your Bills story. And all three of us sort of told our stories and how we came from different backgrounds. I mean, Alex is from Long Island, as all veteran FRS listeners know. And so he, started following the Bills. Like when his dad's a Giants fan, when he got to Fredonia, everybody was a Bills fan, sort of started watching the Bills and really became a member of Bills Mafia that way. Chloe's story, I think, is the best out of the three of ours. So, I'm going to tell the story. So this is true. Chloe's parents met at a Bills game. They met at a Bills tailgate, and they actually got engaged in the parking lot of the stadium. And so Chloe told that story there. She was like, I am here. I am on this earth because of the Buffalo Bills. And I think that's the coolest story out of the three of ours. Mine was, again, I mean, as I've talked about on the show, I've been a Bills fan my entire life. There has never been any team that I was going to be a fan of. My parents raised me to be Bills fans. They've watched football for years. My grandparents are Bills fans, and I was just raised on it. I mean, when I was a kid, I went as Marshawn Lynch for Halloween 3 years in a row, which literally just consisted of 4-year-old me wearing a Marshawn Lynch number 23 Bills jersey, and I thought it was the greatest thing ever. But yeah, I mean, I have so many memories of watching Bills games. I didn't tell this in the story, but I'm sort of thinking about it now. I have so many fond memories of when I was a kid going to, our Sundays would always go, we'd go to church. I was raised Catholic. We'd go to 11 o'clock mass at 11 a.m. It'd usually be over sometime shortly before noon. And then we would go and visit my great-grandmother, who, again, Fredonia connection, my great-grandmother, who was a Fredonia alum, class of 1936. We used to go visit her on Sundays, and we'd go hang out at her house. We called her Gigi. And, all of us cousins and, my sisters and all of us would just sort of hang out. And then we'd get home in time for the Bills game. And I have so many fond memories as a kid of always, it was always, we go to church, we go to Gigi's, we go home and watch the Bills. And the Bills were not particularly good during this time, but I have such fond memories of that. And that's a lot of the reason why I'm still a Bills fan today, is because I have that connection. And I think everybody has that story. But to the game itself on Thursday. So the three of us went into the stadium. We did make it to our seats. The line for security took a while, as you might imagine. But it was incredible. Stevie Johnson was the legend of the game, leading the charge. Of course, the where else would you rather be than right here, right now. It was amazing. It was a cool experience. And then the game got started. The game itself was definitely a lot closer than many of us were hoping it would be. The Dolphins received the opening kickoff and came right down the field and scored a touchdown. Ollie Gordon with a 2-yard touchdown run, and it was like right off the bat, Dolphins are up 7-0. So we're kind of like, okay, that's not great. But the Bills got the ball back, and Buffalo's offense has they didn't look their best for the entirety of the game on Thursday, but the offense is a well-oiled machine at this point of the year. Bills come down the field, 7 plays, 85 yards, and Josh Allen throws a 20-yard touchdown pass to Dalton Kincaid. He did a great job to muscle his way into the end zone. 7-7 at the end of the first quarter. Second quarter, Bills have the ball early on, and Josh Allen makes a typical Josh Allen type of play, rolling to his left, not finding anything open, and then just sort of does a basketball one-handed chest pass, just flips the ball to the third-string tight end, Jackson Hawes, who makes the catch for the touchdown. Jackson Hawes is quickly becoming one of my favorite young players on this offense. Hawes was the Bills' 5th-round pick, tight end out of Georgia Tech. He's the third-string tight end, and of course, he had that big catch in the opening Sunday night game against the Ravens that set the Bills up in a goal-to-go situation, which, helped in their fourth quarter comeback to beat the Ravens. But Jackson Hawes has been not only great receiving, he has been an incredible blocker for the Bills so far. Remember the last couple of years, the Bills, a lot of times when they want to bring in an extra offensive lineman and do max protect up front, they would bring in, one of their backup guards, Alec Anderson, as a 6th offensive lineman. And Alec Anderson is a very, capable and very solid backup lineman. But when you have a tight end who can do that, you don't need to bring in an extra lineman. And it really gives Joe Brady in the offensive playbook a lot more flexibility. And not to mention, if you want to bring in Alec Anderson, you still can. The Bills still have him. It's this quality depth is really helping the Bills even early on this year. So the Bills up 14-7. Miami at the end of the half puts together a long drive, 16 plays, 71 yards. Tua Tagovailoa caps it off with a 3-yard touchdown pass to Jalen Waddle, and the Bills and Dolphins are tied at 14 going into the second half. So, again, a lot closer than we would like. But in the third quarter, the Bills get the ball and come right down the field and score. James Cook, a 2-yard rushing touchdown. Bills back up by 7. To the fourth quarter, we go early in the quarter. The Dolphins again driving down the field. Bills offense had a couple of drives where they had really stalled. And Tua Tagovailoa hits Tyreek Hill for a 5-yard touchdown to tie the game at 21. Game's tied at 21. The Bills drive stalls. They have to punt. And Cameron Johnston, the new Bills punter, is roughed on the kick. 15-yard penalty against the Dolphins gives Buffalo a first down, and the Bills ensure that they will make the Dolphins pay. Josh Allen hits Khalil Shakir for a 15-yard catch-and-run touchdown, capping off a 9-play, 65-yard drive to put the Bills up 28-21. Miami has the ball. The Dolphins are driving down the field to tie or potentially take the lead. And here come the defensive takeaways to save the day. Just like the Bills defense did last year when they were in a tough spot, they got a takeaway. And Terrell Bernard comes away with probably one of the easiest interceptions of his career. He picks off Tua Tagovailoa and runs it down the near sideline. Bills running down as much clock as they can with 22 seconds left. Matt Prater nails a 48-yard field goal. He missed one badly earlier in this game, shanked it to the left. But the 48-yard field goal puts the Bills up by 10, and that does it. The Bills beat the Dolphins 31-21. Buffalo is 3-0. The Dolphins drop to 0-3. And the rest of the Week 3 action around the NFL, you had a couple of surprising scores. How about the Cleveland Browns blocking what would have been the go-ahead Packers field goal and then kicking one of their own, the rookie Andre Smith, who missed a couple of huge kicks in the Browns' Week 1 loss to Cincinnati. He plays the hero and makes a 55-yard field goal for the win. The Browns upset the Packers 13-10. This was a day of blocked kicks. It was so weird. We had some other games. The Colts are 3-0. They put a 41-20 bashing on the Tennessee Titans on the back of 3 rushing touchdowns from Jonathan Taylor. Thank you, Jonathan Taylor. He's on my fantasy team. The first week of Jake Browning starting in place of the injured Joe Burrow for the Bengals did not go particularly well for Cincinnati. The Minnesota Vikings, who are also not playing with their starting quarterback, Carson Wentz plays a solid game. He throws 2 touchdowns. The Vikings obliterate the Bengals 48-10. And Vikings corner Isaiah Rodgers had 2 touchdowns in this game. He had an interception that he returned for a touchdown and a forced fumble that he recovered and ran back for a touchdown. It was insane. The Steelers defense picks up 5 takeaways and beats the Patriots 21-14 in New England. Aaron Rodgers also throwing 2 touchdowns in that game. The Eagles with an incredible comeback. Philly blocks 2 Rams field goal attempts in the fourth quarter. There were so many blocked kicks. It was ridiculous. And the last one with the Eagles up by 1, 27-26. Rams kicker Joshua Carty lines up for what would have been the game-winning field goal. Not only does Eagles defensive tackle Jordan Davis block the kick, but the big 300-pound defensive tackle picks it up and runs it all the way back for a touchdown. And I noted to Chloe as we were watching this game, like, Jordan Davis runs really well for a bigger defensive tackle. Eagles win that game 33-26. The defending Super Bowl champs are 3-0. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, after the Jets kicked what looked like it was going to be their game-winning field goal, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers said not so fast. Baker Mayfield drives down the field, and the Bucs kick the game-winning field goal to take it 29-27. Tampa Bay is 3-0. The Jets drop to 0-3. The Washington Commanders, without Jaden Daniels, still get the win as Marcus Mariota leads Washington to a 41-24 beatdown over the Raiders. A shutout down in Carolina. The Carolina Panthers get their first win of the season in dominant fashion. They blank the Atlanta Falcons 30-0. A close game. The Jacksonville Jaguars take down the Houston Texans 17-10. Jacksonville's 2-1. The Texans are 0-3, shockingly. The Chargers, you talk about, again, you know, the Broncos last week had that devastating loss. The Chargers pick up the win 23-20. LA is 3-0. The Broncos drop to 1-2. An absolute beatdown up in Seattle. The Seahawks obliterate the Saints 44-13. The Seahawks were up 38-6 at the half. And it was only 38-6 because the Saints kicked a field goal right at the end of the half. So it was 38-3 Seattle in the second quarter, a 44-13 win for the Seahawks. The Cowboys looking rough again. The Chicago Bears get their first win of the season. Ben Johnson gets his first win as a head coach. Caleb Williams throwing for 298 yards and 4 touchdowns as the Bears dominate the Cowboys 31-14. A close win. The 49ers kick a field goal at the win. Their first game, of course, playing with Mac Jones at quarterback in place of the injured Brock Purdy. 49ers did get some bad news. Nick Bosa likely out for the rest of the season with injury. But San Francisco is 3-0 with a 16-15 win over the Arizona Cardinals. The Sunday night game, the Kansas City Chiefs and the New York Giants. If you stayed up to watch this entire game, I am so sorry. This game was so ugly. The only highlight for the Giants was a couple of fun runs by rookie running back Cam Scatterbo. The Chiefs looked rough. I mean, they looked rough. Mistakes, penalties all over the place. But Kansas City, almost sort of by default, gets the win 22-9. Russell Wilson was absolutely terrible in this game, and he was actually benched for rookie first-round pick Jackson Dart. Dart will make the start for the Giants in Week 4. Chiefs get their first win of the season. They're 1-2. Giants drop to 0-3. We had a great game on Monday night. The Lions running all over the Ravens defense. Not to mention the Lions defense comes away with 7 sacks of Lamar Jackson. And Detroit puts up 17 points in the fourth quarter to beat the Ravens 38-30 in Baltimore. The Lions are 2-1. The Ravens drop to 1-2. So that's your last week look. Again, Week 4 begins tonight with an NFC West battle as the Arizona Cardinals play host to the Seattle Seahawks. We're going to take a short break. When I come back, we're going to look ahead to the next 2 games on the Bills' schedule, as well as making my picks for this week. Thanks for tuning in to Big Blue Sports on WCVF 88.9 FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. And welcome back to Big Blue Sports on WCVF 88.9 FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. Of course, the Bills will play 2 games before I'm back live on the air again. Of course, next week, no Big Blue because of fall break. The Bills at home against the New Orleans Saints on Sunday. Buffalo is a 15.5-point favorite to win this game. The Bills are 3-0. The Saints are 0-3. There's a legitimate case to be made that the Saints are the worst team in the NFL. It's rough for New Orleans. I'll be so totally honest. I really think, the Bills' injuries, again, as it stands right now, there's a few players who are questionable. Again, Tyler Bass still on injured reserve, but this is the last game of the injured reserve, so he could be back for the Sunday night game against the Patriots. A few other players are currently listed as questionable. Matt Milano and Ed Oliver, who missed last week's game, they are both still questionable. Matt Milano with a pectoral injury, Ed Oliver with an ankle injury. Spencer Brown is questionable with a calf injury as well, and AJ Epinesa questionable with a pectoral injury. Again, hard to tell at this point whether or not, questionable means they're going to play or not. We're still a few days out from game time, and the hope is that after practice both today and tomorrow, we'll get a clearer picture of who's going to be playing on Sunday. So the Bills hosting the Saints at 1 p.m. on Sunday, and then hosting the Patriots at 8:20 on October 5th. And I'm going to be so real. I think the Bills absolutely take care of business and win both of those games. I really think that Buffalo is I think the Bills are in command, and it's a realistic possibility that the Bills could be 7-0 when they play the Kansas City Chiefs. They play a lot of teams that are below 500. They play a lot of teams that just aren't great. And so we'll see if they can take advantage of that schedule. I'm going to finish my show today by making my picks for the week. So tonight's game, Seahawks at Cardinals. I'm going to go with Arizona to get back on track and win this game. They played well despite a loss to the 49ers last week. On Sunday, our first overseas game is the Vikings and Steelers matchup in Dublin. The Vikings come in red hot after a big win, and I think they get the win over the Steelers in a close, low-scoring game. Washington at Atlanta. Not sure if the Commanders are going to have Jaden Daniels back or not. The Falcons are coming off of an embarrassing loss, but I think Washington does get the win. Browns at Lions. The Browns picked up a big win over the Packers last week. Will it repeat itself this week? No, I think the Lions get the win. Panthers at New England. I think this game is going to be really incredibly sloppy. But I am going to pick New England to win it. Chargers at Giants. Jackson Dart's NFL debut. I think the Chargers get the win to move to 4-0. Eagles at Bucks, a matchup of two 3-0 teams. That's going to be a fun one. I think Philly gets the win in that. Titans at Texans, a battle of two 0-3 teams, and the Texans have to win this game. They got to win this one. The 4 o'clock games, Colts at Rams. I think this is where the Colts suffer their first loss of the season. They're off to a great start, but I think the Rams win it. Jaguars at 49ers. Both teams I think are playing pretty well so far. I think Jacksonville goes and gets the win. Ravens at Chiefs at 4:25. This one's going to be fun. To be so totally honest, the Ravens 100% I think are the better team. The Ravens get the win. They are 2.5-point favorites. Bears at Raiders. This one could go either way. I'm going to pick the Raiders to win because I don't really have faith in the Bears. Packers at Cowboys on Sunday night. I think Green Bay gets back on track with a win. The Micah Parsons revenge game goes in Green Bay's favor. And then a Monday night doubleheader, you've got Jets at Dolphins, a matchup between two 0-3 teams. I think the Jets definitely get the win in this one, even though the Dolphins are favored. And then Bengals at Broncos at 8:15. That one, I think the Broncos get back on track after a couple of embarrassing losses and get the win. That is going to do it for this afternoon's episode of Big Blue Sports. I hope everyone has fun at Rockin' the Commons this weekend. Come see us 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. in Barker Commons. Have a great fall break. We will catch you all in 2 weeks on Thursday, October 9th. Go Bills, go Sabres, and we'll catch you in 2 weeks. Have a good one.